Why United Way? Because United Way of West Georgia helps support 25 local organizations. Organizations that make life better for all of us. Yes, 25. There's no easier way to help so many of your neighbors through a single donation. When you give to United Way of West Georgia, you help a lot.
Hi, and welcome to the West Point Lake Update. I'm your host, Steven Rector, Park Ranger with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We have some new and returning guests for today's show. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
When boating this summer, remember three things. We call them the Big Three. Hi, this is Sergeant Jim Bradfield with DNR Law Enforcement in Troup County. Number one, wear your life jacket. You can't grab a stowed life jacket if you're ejected during an accident. Number two, obey and follow navigation rules. On the water, there are rules of the road. Know them and follow them. And number three, don't drink in boat. A couple of drinks could ruin your life forever. Remember the Big Three and boat safe. Go to gadnrle.org and click on boating for more information.
Hi, and welcome back. Joining me now is Pete Golden, volunteer with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Pete, thanks for being here today.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Pete, I invited you on the show today. I wanted to talk a little bit about the volunteer program, and I guess I wanted to start with how did you get involved with volunteering to start with, and then ultimately here at West Point Lake?
Well, it started with just camping over the last 20 years or so around the West Point Lake area, and it's always been one of my favorite lakes, and the campgrounds, I've always enjoyed them. And so as I have traveled some over the later years, some of the campgrounds I was noticing was being shut down and due to budget cuts and stuff like that. So ran across a group discussion where they discussed volunteering for the Corps of Engineers and got me interested because I seen West Point. And so I made the phone calls and did the contacts, and here I am.
And so I know there's a lot of different volunteer opportunities here at West Point Lake, but specifically what are you working on here at West Point?
Okay, what I do is at our Safer Herd, which is one of the nicer, and they're all nice, but it's one of the nicest campgrounds close to the office. And I do basically a host type deal to where I go in, clean the campgrounds, clean the fire pits, interact with the public if they have questions and that type of thing.
And a lot of people that are prospective volunteers, one of the important things is where are we going to place you? Where are you going to camp? What kind of services do you get in return for volunteering here at West Point?
And what we have here is a volunteer village, and right now we're in baby steps. So, we have full hookup sites, waterfront sites, very nicely done, and a lot of effort was put into clearing trees and making it very attractive. So that's where we're at, and there's, I believe, it's 10 total sites on that site, and about half of those, a little over half of those are waterfront.
And so you have water, electric, and a sewage drop there.
And a sewage drop.
Now, when we get into Schaefer Herd Campground and we see you actually performing some of these duties, besides just kind of general picking up and cleaning up, or what other things are involved as far as the equipment that you're offered and the mechanics of how that works?
Okay, what we use is a blower. Now, I use my personal gas blower because it just saves time and steps, but we're supplied electric blowers that do a good job. And we'll clean the grill, and we'll shovel out the fire pits, and then blow the leaves, and I'll pick up all the trash and everything like that.
So it's a cleaning, but it's also kind of a beautifying type of position.
It's a lot of gratification to go out there and clean a site, and then when you walk away from it, look back at it and say, that looks good.
And you've been doing this since, I believe, early March for us here?
Yeah, I was actually one of the first ones to start.
So from March into kind of the middle summer, I'm sure that you've seen a few things that our campers do that you thought, wow, if you wouldn't do that, that would make the campground look a whole lot nicer, and it would make life a lot easier on the volunteer folks.
Right.
Can you just run through a few of those things that you sort of spot along the way?
There are some, and I've got some pet peeves of some of this, and that's, for instance, cigarette butts. And you take a camper that's been 2 weeks, 2 people smoke, that's probably a carton of cigarettes. And if they're doing this, flipping cigarettes, that means that we're down there probably 30, 45 minutes picking up cigarette butts, because the next camper certainly doesn't want to walk into a campsite full of cigarette butts. Trash in the fire pits, that's another one. There should only be wood in the fire pits. And then we get some campers I like to call beavers, because they'll go in the woods and drag up every stick, tree trunk that they can find. And generally they don't end up burning this. And so we end up having to take it back to the woods and dropping it back out. So it's just, I don't know, the old saying is, leave it cleaner than what you find it. And I think, you know, if you were at home and you were cooking and doing all this, how would you leave your yard? And I think that's how they should leave the campsite.
So you asked that, you know, the cigarette butts go into a trash container of some kind, not certainly not on the ground, but also not in a fire pit. No,
and worst case scenario, I'd rather have them in the fire pit than on the ground. At least they're in one place where I can pick them up and not have to sit and, you know, spend a lot of time moving all over the campsite, because these sites are large.
And then also, not just don't throw your trash in the fire ring, but certainly also don't try to burn that trash either.
No, because what I find in a lot of fire rings, after it's burned, you will find the aluminum cans, and they're halfway melted, bottles that are busted, which leaves broken glass, you know. And there's time we may not be able to get to a campsite before the next person comes in. And so then that person is dealing with broken glass and leftover food and some other things. This is probably not the place to name that I found.
And then Pete, just one last thing really quickly. If a camper is on a campsite and they see you walking around, is it okay to approach you and ask you to pick up a couple things?
Certainly. I mean, I enjoy the conversations. I enjoy the interactions with the campers and answer all the questions. And if they ask me to clean the fire pit, I will gladly do that. I'm a little bit leery about blowing off a side when all their stuff is there, because the blower naturally creates a lot of dust. But,
Pete,
you know,
some great information today. I really appreciate all the work you've done for us at Schaefer Herd Campground, and I appreciate you being here today. So thank you very much.
And I've enjoyed what I'm doing, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome to West Point Lake. My name is Rebecca Fink, Park Ranger at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I love the wildlife here at West Point Lake as much as the next person does. And when you're out here at the parks or the beaches with your family and you've brought food with you, that food belongs to you. Please do not be tempted to feed the wildlife here. When you feed ducks and the Canadian geese that we have here, they can become very aggressive. They associate people with food, and they no longer become afraid of people. They will mob you, approach you in very large numbers, and sometimes be very aggressive towards adults and children. We also have a big problem with them pooping at our beaches and at our many parks, which can cause a lot of health hazards to the children, and if you step on it, you're also bringing those harmful bacteria into your home. So just a quick reminder, please avoid feeding the wildlife here at West Point Lake. Enjoy them from a distance and feel free to take pictures. Thank you.
Hi, and welcome back. Joining us now is Gregory Gallagher with American Medical Responses. And Gregory, you are with the Clinical Education Services of AMR, correct?
That is correct.
I got that right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here, Steven.
I wanted to bring you on today. I don't know that we've had anybody with the ambulance service on very many of our television shows. And I got to thinking over this past week how hot and humid it's been, particularly here around West Point Lake. And then if you get in the sun, whew, crazy hot.
Yes,
and
it is.
I wanted to bring somebody on who could talk to us about the dangers of heat exhaustion and then also go through some of the symptoms from really the early dehydration aspect all the way up through the very dangerous heat stroke that can ultimately lead in a fatality.
Steve, and it's a very concerning subject for us in emergency services. Most of the time what we consider the chronic illnesses dealing with cardiac and other respiratory illnesses, you know, they never take a break. But those types of illnesses are amplified during certain types of environmental climates, especially high temperatures. And being that we're in the South and we have the high humidity and the high heat temperatures, it proposes a huge concern for certain types of populations. Those populations will range from infants and young children to our older adults, but it does not exclude even well-conditioned athletes. As a matter of fact, in 2001, Corey Stringer, pro football player, he succumbed to a heat injury as a result of heat stroke, and he later died as a result of that. So, you know, we pay very, very close attention to these special populations and those with those chronic conditions. And we can't turn a blind eye to it just because they have underlying conditions such as cardiac problems.
What are some of the early signs that you're starting to get dehydrated, and then at what point do symptoms show up that you can start to realize this is very serious and we need to seek additional assistance?
You know, from just pure dehydration, you know, we're going to put off perspiration whenever we're performing high exertional activities. And, you know, you can usually combat that with taking frequent breaks and getting rehydrated with your waters, some of your sports drinks. And don't confuse the sport drinks with the high energy drinks and the high sugar drinks. Those are actually dangerous to you whenever you're involved in high temperature activities. So, you know, confine your drinks and your fluid intake to water and your electrolyte based fluid sports drinks such as your Gatorades and your Powerades. So those symptoms are very, very subtle, and they begin with some excessive thirst. So go ahead and treat that if you haven't already taken proactive measures. The next one that we actually start to become a little concerned about is the development and the onset of heat cramps. Again, those can be combated with moving that particular individual to a cooler area, a shaded area and ventilated area, and begin to passively cool them off. A cool pack or a cool towel, moist towel to the forehead and to the cramping area, slight massaging of the cramping area, and of course get them some fluids. They're not only are they sweating, but they're also losing salt. And once we start to develop certain types of symptoms, then we start to be concerned about different types of electrolyte imbalances and fluid shifts, and you know, all the body processes depends on all these certain types of electrolytes. After the heat cramps come heat exhaustion. Heat exhaustion, of course, is a little more severe, and again, you want to get that individual to a cool area out of the extreme temperature. Activate the emergency services system early on whenever you witness people start to become vulnerable to the extreme temperatures. This individual, this patient is going to need aggressive fluid intake. Some salt products, as a matter of fact, is also a recommendation, and a little more aggressive cooling. However, whenever we do have those patients who are suffering these what is considered an extreme heat event, you do not want to make them shiver. Once you start to make them shiver, it actually starts to increase the core body temperature and can have adverse effects and just basically negate the attempts that you're trying to help them. And of course, after the heat exhaustion is the real devastating one that is called heat stroke. And those, once someone suffers a heat stroke, they stop sweating. The thermal regulating temperatures in the body, along with other systems actually begin to shut down. And as a result, some of the other organ systems in the body begin to shut down. It has very bad effects on the kidneys. It amplifies, or what we call exacerbates, some of the respiratory concerns and some of the cardiac concerns as well. So when that person reaches heat stroke, we're talking about core body temperatures of 104 degrees or higher. Again, they stop sweating. There's a lot of confusion and disorientation. And what's going on, that's what we see on the outside. But what is going on the inside of the body is muscle breakdown. And a condition called rhabdomyolysis can actually develop. And all that is a big fancy word for the muscles in the body beginning to break down. And when they start to enter the bloodstream, they become toxic and caustic to the kidneys, and the kidneys cannot filter that. So again, we have a domino effect of the process. And then some of the signs and symptoms, as you're requesting for heat exhaustion, include some fatigue, excessive sweating, some, maybe a little bit of altered mental status, just not as severe as the heat stroke. And then, of course, your heat cramps, you're going to have your cramping, and again, your excessive sweating and excessive thirst.
And I know it's probably different for each individual, but in a worst case scenario, how quickly might someone progress from basic dehydration up through a heat stroke? I mean, is this something that might take hours or minutes or anywhere in between? And
again, it is going to be individual and case specific. For those who are highly vulnerable, it can progress very rapidly from a few minutes to an hour or two. And those who are a little more acclimated, for lack of better words, it can actually take hours before the onset. And we generally see those that when it takes hours for the onset is those who are ignoring the signs and symptoms as it begins early on. One study has actually stated that firefighters during extreme temperatures, during extreme exertion, during their activities on an emergency scene, with all the gear on, because some of them can range between 40 and 70 pounds of extra gear, they've been known to lose or put out about 1 to 3 liters of sweat and fluid in an hour. So it's very, very important to make sure you know your limitations and don't ignore the signs and symptoms. The body's natural defense mechanism, as it gets hot and it's thermoregulated internally, is to sweat. But once we get beyond that, we're reaching a very, very dangerous point.
And then one thing I wanted to ask you about also was kind of the effects of different types of drinks. So caffeinated beverages, you touched on energy drinks, but then also alcoholic beverages. And how do sort of ingesting those or drinking those caffeinated beverages, energy drinks or alcoholic drinks, how does that play into dehydration and heat exhaustion?
Sure, all they're going to do is just actually, for lack of better words, quench the palate. They're not going to do anything for the body. The body does not use the materials or the ingredients that's in the alcoholic beverages or the high sugar content drinks to be able to use it for energy production or electrolyte replacement and proper fluid replacement. And then the carbonation in the drinks, as we all know, it's just a bad combination. So the body just cannot begin to metabolize those types of drinks the way it can the drinks that replace the electrolytes and even some of the salt content in the Gatorades and the Powerades. It goes to play a very, very major role in the replacing of the salt and the sodium that we're losing whenever we're sweating just normally.
So water and then also the drinks that have the electrolytes in them.
That is correct.
So the folks who are out here drinking the caffeinated beverages or hitting the energy drinks, they still could actually suffer from dehydration. They're not taking in the proper types of drinks.
That is correct. They're actually putting themselves on a very slippery slope considering the high temperatures that we actually are exposed to here in the Deep South. And sometimes we just fail to pay attention to the warning signs because we're feeling good. We're out here where it's wet. We're out here where we're in the air. But what we fail to realize that even during some extreme cold temperatures, when people are sweating, they still can become dehydrated. So that's just amplified whenever we're in extreme hot temperatures. Those things just go unnoticed, unfortunately, because we tend to think that we're doing okay because we're in the water. But unfortunately, that water does not get into our system by osmosis. So the water, whenever we're drinking the water, we're taking it in, it's for fluid and volume replacement. Whenever we drink the energy drinks, it has the electrolytes and the components and the ingredients inside it that actually we can metabolize to replace those minerals and electrolytes that we're actually putting out whenever we're sweating.
And I would also assume that when you're out on a day like today where we've got a little bit of a nice breeze, that can be deceiving.
It's
when you're
very
on
deceiving.
a boat and you're moving.
Yes.
Even though the sun's beating down on you, the boat's moving and you've got that nice breeze, that can probably be deceiving, and people could probably get in trouble a little bit quicker on days like today.
And it is very deceiving. And the one thing, because we'll say, well, we're not sweating, so I'm not hot. Well, by the breeze of either a stiff breeze like we have today or the boat moving, and the sweat is evaporating too fast for it to quote unquote accumulate, and you see it running down your forehead. But you're still losing the volume, you're still losing the water, you're still losing the fluids, you're still losing those electrolytes. So it's very, very important to not be distracted and deceived by a day like today.
I really appreciate you being here today. For me, this was kind of a very important topic because some of our most popular areas have very little shade, and there's usually a breeze coming in off of the water. I always get concerned about folks that are swim beaches and folks that are out on the lake getting overheated, dehydrated, and possibly something even worse.
Sure.
Gregory, I really appreciate you being here today and taking the time to explain kind of some of the signs and symptoms, but then also reminding people activate the emergency services system very early.
Very early, yes, sir.
Gregory, thanks for being here today. I appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you, Steven, for having me.
And stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break.
What do you know about operating a boat? Hi, this is Sergeant Jim Bradfield with DNR Law Enforcement in Troup County. Have you heard of the 100-foot law? What is the minimum age of a boat operator? Can you drink alcohol on a boat? Take a boater education course and you'll know the answer to these questions and a lot more. Also remember that anyone born after January the 1st, 1998 must take an approved course to operate a boat on Georgia waters. Information on classroom, online, and home study courses is available at gadnrle.org.
Hi, and welcome back. Joining us now is Kevin Parsons, a park ranger with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Kevin, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Kevin, I brought you on. I know it's July and August. It seems kind of early to start thinking about this stuff, but I wanted to talk to you about the hunting program for the, I guess it'd be 2015-2016 hunting season.
That's right. Yeah, it was never too early to start thinking about hunting season, especially if you have a passion for it. So, but a lot of people are getting geared up for it this time of year. Before you know, it'll be September. It'll be time for bow season for deer. And even before that, it'll actually be small game season for Georgia. That's squirrel, rabbit, and small mammals like that. That'll be opening up August 15th, so it's closer than a lot of people realize.
So I know that all year long you're working on the hunting program, different aspects of it, but probably right now you're kind of in the crunch time, kind of looking at when are we going to start opening gates and stuff for folks, and where are hunting permits, and are they going to be here on time? And can you talk a little bit about the hunting permits and when we expect to receive them and place them on sale to the public?
Yeah, the hunting permits will arrive sometime in early August. This year we've had an extra wrench thrown into the works that was unexpected, but they should be here in time for that small game season in Georgia. Of course, everybody who hunts on Corps of Engineer property needs to have that Corps of Engineer hunting permit. They're $20 and they can be purchased at our project management office just right down on 500 Resource Management Drive in West Point. If you can't get by the office, you can also call at 706-645-2937, purchase one over the phone. Another way, you can send in a letter requesting one. A lot of people don't do that just because of the time it takes, but that's another option. Once they get their hunting permit, hunters also need to make sure they have the proper hunting license for the state they're going to be hunting in, whether it's Georgia or Alabama, because obviously West Point Lake is located in both states. But usually they go on sale around late July, early August, so we should have them in by early August for people to come in and purchase.
I periodically get questions from folks as I'm out there asking, when are your hunting seasons going to be? When are your hunting seasons for Alabama? How about Georgia? Can you just explain how we basically follow right along with everybody else?
Yeah, the Corps of Engineers does not have special seasons like you might see on a Georgia DNR or WMA, for instance. Their season dates might differ than the entire states. They might have special hunts that are only open for 3 days or a weekend or maybe only 2 weeks. Corps of Engineers, we're open, as long as the season's open in the state, it's open on Corps of Engineer property. So basically, when that small game season, for instance, comes in Georgia August 15th, you can go out there and hunt August 15th. When muzzleloader season for deer comes in for Georgia, you can come out there and hunt corn. You can hunt it all season long. We don't close it down during the middle of the season, towards the end, or anything like that. So just as long as you got those regs, the Georgia regs or Alabama regs, just go by their seasons and you'll be good when you come hunt with us.
For people who aren't familiar with the hunting land here at West Point Lake, just briefly tell us how many acres that we have here that are available to public hunt, and then also talk about some of the food plots that you've put in different areas.
Yeah, the Corps of Engineers, we actually have 10,000 acres of a hunting land that we manage. Most of it's located in Georgia. We do have several hundred acres that are located in Alabama as well. And when you actually purchase a hunting permit, you'll actually get a hunting map showing those areas and what different types of weapons you can use in those areas. In addition to that, we actually lease out a good chunk of land to the Georgia DNR for West Point WMA that they manage. Now you need to make sure that you know what their regulations are up there. So in all, when people come to West Point Lake, they're going to have close to 20,000 acres of hunting land to utilize. As far as the food plots go, we actually maintain just shy of 90 acres food plots around the lake. That's kind of what people's money goes to when they buy a permit. It goes to plowing those food plots. It goes to road work. It goes to maintaining gates. It goes to prescribed burning. Just to help manage the areas. But what we do, we usually plant our food plots sometime in September. We use what we call a 4-way seed mix, and that includes oats, rye, wheat, and clover. Those are good grasses that grow throughout the winter, because that's actually providing a winter food source for deer and turkey and other wildlife. So we try and get in September so we get a little rain on it before October rolls around, because October is usually the driest month here in Georgia traditionally. So we want to get a little rain on it, that way it becomes established in October, so when deer are already eating on it, they're not pulling it out of the ground, pulling the roots out of the ground. They're actually biting it off, and it continues to grow back. So we're shooting for that September deadline to get it planted so that deer will have that food source all through January and February. So,
Kevin, some great information. Just a reminder that the hunting permits are $20. They can be purchased at our office or on the telephone, 706-645-2937, correct?
That's correct.
All right, Kevin, thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it. And stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break.
Hello, I'm Susan Cromer, Park Ranger with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers at West Point Lake, reminding you that life jackets save lives. Life jacket loaner stations are located at our campground and beach area gatehouses around the lake. These life jackets are available for you and your family to use at no cost. Please take advantage of this free program and keep a close eye on your children while enjoying yourself at West Point Lake. For more information, please call 706-645-2937.
I want to thank all my guests for being on the show today. We had Pete Golden, volunteer with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
It's a lot of gratification to go about there and clean a site, and then when you walk away from it and look back at it and say, that looks good.
Gregory Gallagher with American Medical Response.
Just pure dehydration. We're going to put off perspiration whenever we're performing high exertional activities. And, you can usually combat that with taking frequent breaks and getting rehydrated with your waters, some of your sports drinks.
And Kevin Parsons, Park Ranger here with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Well, it's never too early to start thinking about hunting season, especially if you have a passion for it. So, but a lot of people are getting geared up for it this time of year.
For more information on these stories and more, please like us on our official Facebook page, facebook.com/westpointlake.usace.